The SEC released game times for the 2024 football season. What does it mean for the Oklahoma Sooners, and how does the SEC continue to win like that?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Go download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply over at Gametime. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. The SEC released its game times for the 2024 football season, and the Oklahoma Sooners made out like bandits. They really did. This is a great slate of kickoff times for Oklahoma, and you look at it and you only get 2 early window kicks. I got the schedule up there for those that are watching on YouTube, but just breaking it down, you're going to get primetime kickoffs against Temple and Houston to start the season. When you play Tulane, it's going to be an afternoon kick. Against Tennessee, could be afternoon or in prime time. At Auburn, an afternoon kick. After the bye week, you play Texas, afternoon. We've known that one for some time. And then your early window kicks, home against South Carolina, at Ole Miss. You're not going to get all prime time or all afternoon kickoffs. That's just not the way it's going to be. But the fact that you were able to limit it to just 2 early window kickoffs, that's a huge difference from what the Big 12 was throwing at you over the last few years. Tyler McComas of The Ref put it out there on Twitter. He had it out there. I mean, Oklahoma, for some time, we're getting 6 and 7, 11 o'clock kickoffs as a part of Big Noon Kickoff with Fox Sports. Now with ESPN, them valuing those afternoon time slots and the primetime windows more so than Fox with the early slate, that's a huge win for the Oklahoma Sooners and just reinforces the move to the SEC, where you're going to be getting an opportunity to play in these big time windows and in prime time a lot more. And that just helps you on the recruiting front. Brent Venables talked about it. Not having to play in 11 o'clock windows, it allows families and prospects to get to Norman for game day environments. They get a full picture of what it's going to look like. When you have to play on Friday night and then get up as soon as you can on Saturday or travel through the night Friday, you don't get necessarily the best experience, because who knows what the tailgating experience is going to look like. And then you're probably pretty exhausted from the travel in that you may not fully appreciate what you're looking at. But the fact that, okay, you're going to see more 2:30 and later kickoffs, 10 of Oklahoma's 12 games are going to be starting after 1 o'clock. I think that bodes really, really well for the Sooners and how they want to recruit and how they want to welcome families for official and unofficial visits this fall. It's big. And again, you're not going to get all afternoon kicks, but the fact that you limited it to just 2, and one of those being at Ole Miss, which could be at an 11 o'clock or between 11 o'clock and noon kickoff, that's a fantastic road game to have in the early window, because you know that the Grove is going to be buzzing regardless of what time the game is. Ole Miss fans are going to be out there in full force, locking down their tailgate spots, creating probably a great brunch for the tailgating experience for that early kickoff. And they're going to be buzzing to welcome Oklahoma fans. And it's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. You could put that one in the middle of the night on Friday, early Sunday morning. The Grove is going to be jam-packed with tailgaters just enjoying the experience. So that one's going to be great, regardless of the kickoff time. So if you had to have a team with a great or with an early kickoff window, man, that one at Ole Miss, I think, is just going to create a great environment for television for Oklahoma versus Ole Miss. It's going to be a really, really good football game, which could have big-time playoff implications. Looking at the rest of the schedule, after Ole Miss, you got Maine at 1:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus or the SEC Network Plus, and then at Missouri, Alabama, at LSU could all be flexed. Those right now could either be afternoon kickoffs or primetime kickoffs, just depending on the way the season's playing out, what the networks are looking for. but 4 of Oklahoma's 12 games could either be afternoon or prime time. And those 4 are each going to have big time storylines, playoff implications. That first one against Tennessee, that's Oklahoma's first game in the SEC. 2 5-star quarterbacks in Jackson Arnold and Nico Iamaleava going at it. Josh Heupel's return to Norman. I mean, all of that sets up for that game potentially to be flexed into prime time to get as much out of the storylines as possible, to get more buildup throughout the day. I think there's a very real possibility that goes. I've been of the mind that Oklahoma's trip to Baton Rouge will definitely be a primetime game, because why wouldn't you want to put OU LSU in primetime? But a lot of that's going to depend on LSU's season and how it goes. But our guy Chris Gordy over at Locked On SEC, I mean, he's talked about it. That OU versus LSU game could very well be for a spot in the playoff. The team that wins that one goes on to the college football playoff. The team that loses goes home. And so that could have huge implications. We know the game against Alabama will. The way that Missouri is being talked about right now as a top 10 program, top 15 in the ESPN Football Power Index, I mean, that one is going to have playoff implications as well. You could be looking at that one as potentially a top 10 matchup. So Oklahoma could close the season with a trio of top 10, top 15 matchups, all have the opportunity of either being in the afternoon window or the primetime window. So I love this for the Sooners. This is going to be a lot of fun. A few takeaways here. I love the flex scheduling aspect. I love that the networks, that ESPN is looking at this and be like, hey, guess we want to highlight certain teams at certain times, but we got to see how the season's going to play out. We got to see what the talk of the town is and try to take advantage of the buzz that's being created by the teams that are going to be on the schedule that weekend. And I mean, OU welcoming Alabama, that could very well be a primetime kickoff. And, again, capturing the buzz and building the buzz all throughout the day on their shows, on the networks, on ESPN, building towards a primetime kick between Oklahoma and Alabama just makes a ton of sense. I love the flex scheduling. And then again, I love the fact that Oklahoma isn't going to have to play a ton of early window kickoffs. I think it's just going to help the home atmosphere get better set up for tailgating. And then it's also going to help Brent Venables, his staff, the on-campus recruiting staff, just to be able to host people better, host players better, when they're not having to try and figure that, they'll have it all figured out, whether it's an 11 o'clock kick or a 2:30, but it's just going to be able to create a better official visit, unofficial visit environment for those prospects. And then, the fact that Oklahoma could have as many as 6 primetime games this year, that's a far cry from what we've seen in the past in the Big 12. All that matters really is that for Oklahoma on the field, it shouldn't matter what time they play, but I think for the fans, we're going to enjoy this so much more. We're just going to enjoy it more. And that's the fun part of this, is that I think it's going to be a lot more fun to watch. You're going to be able to get up, get the brisket going, first thing in the morning, and then let it go until you get that afternoon kickoff. You get that primetime kickoff. You'll really be able to actually enjoy your morning, taking in, College Game Day, taking in Fox Sports Big Noon Kickoff, enjoying those things, as opposed to like gearing up and getting amped up for game time. No, you're going to get to enjoy your morning as you ease into it. Being somebody that, coaches their kids' soccer teams, I'm going to enjoy this a whole lot more too, as opposed to, having to like rush home from the soccer fields in the fall to get there by kickoff and get going with what Oklahoma's got going on. So I'm excited, man. This is going to be so much fun. And big reason why we're going to have so much fun this fall is we're going to get to watch Jackson Arnold. The folks over at CBS Sports, they're big time believers in what Arnold's going to do this year. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. If you're looking for last minute tickets, Gametime is the place to go. It makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off, with killer last minute deals and all in prices, for views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can go to any show. There's a great list of comedy shows coming to town, whether it's Kevin Hart, Jerry Seinfeld, going to be in Oklahoma. Man, now's the time to go get in and get those last minute deals. Find the best prices available. You even get event cancellation protection and job loss protection from Gametime. You're not going to get that anywhere else. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets or tickets to your favorite shows with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners have one of the more intriguing quarterbacks in the country in Jackson Arnold, a player that was 5-star prospect coming out of Denton Guyer, won the Elite 11 competition, the National Gatorade Player of the Year, went deep in the Texas 6A playoffs each of his 2 seasons as a starter, had a ton of experience at Guyer, coming to Oklahoma last year as a true freshman, got in the BYU game, wasn't great, but helped Oklahoma at times get the necessary yards that they needed to get in order to win the game. And then in the Alamo Bowl, had a lot of really great moments, had a few moments that you're like, not so fast, young man. You got a lot of work to do. But being that it was his first start with a new offensive coordinator and all of the turnover that Oklahoma faced on the offensive line, understandable that there might be some freshman bumps in the road. Well, Clint Brewster over at CBS Sports ranked the second-year quarterbacks going into 2024 and discussed who he thought was going to be really, really good, and just ranked them. And with Jackson Arnold, I mean, he basically is a believer in what Jackson Arnold is going to be putting out there this year. He says Arnold was a 5-star in the 2023 class, and his ability pushed out starting quarterback Dylan Gabriel, one of college football's most prolific passers, to Oregon. We really like the weapons at receiver for Arnold with Deion Burks, Andrell Anthony, and Nick Anderson. Brewster goes on to say, Arnold started in the bowl game for Oklahoma against Arizona, and there were definitely growing pains and freshman lumps, but there were also some magnificent plays where the Texas native displayed wonderful footwork, escapability, and an explosive arm. All of that, I believe, to be true. And it's easy to look at Jackson Arnold and be like, man, this is a dude that didn't have a ton of experience, but the best way to get experience is to go play football. And Jackson Arnold's going to get to play a lot of football this fall. And he's got all of the talent that you could want in a quarterback. He's big, he's agile, he's accurate, he's got a good deep ball. He processes really, really well, makes quick decisions. I think what we saw in the bowl game was him not really used to the idea that, okay, there's some throws that I could make in high school that I'm not going to be able to make in college. I'm not going to be able to get away with as well. But I think we've seen the accuracy on display. Those interceptions that he threw, I don't think they were bad throws, except for the one that was late down the sideline. Other than that one, they were pretty good throws. The Arizona defensive backfield just made really, really good plays in the spring game. I thought he was on target. He was maybe a little, a few inches here and there, could have been a little bit better, but for the most part, he threw catchable balls to his receivers. They were just off the fingertips or drops or, what have you. But I mean, this is a kid that's got a lot of talent. And I know it's easy to overlook Oklahoma's offense right now because of a first-year starter at quarterback and an offensive line that is experiencing a ton of turnover. But let's remember that this kid has got a ton of talent. And I think he's got the right head on his shoulders to not turn into another 5-star flop. Not turn into a Spencer Rattler that didn't really live up to expectations at Oklahoma or South Carolina. I think he's going to be better than that. And I think he's got the right head on his shoulders to lead Oklahoma. In addition to that, I mean, he's got the talent around him. Brewster mentioned it. Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, Andrell Anthony, Jaleel Farouk, Brandon Thompson, Jaquays Petaway, Jaden Gibson. This is a very, very talented wide receiver crew. And I think they're going to get better production out of the tight end spot with Jake Roberts and Bauer Sharp and Devon Mitchell and Josh Van Newell. This is going to be a Caden Helms. I think it's going to be a much, much better offensive unit because you're going to be deeper at wide receiver with a load of dudes that can make plays. Tight end is going to be better. And I do think the offensive line is going to come around and make life easy for Jackson Arnold. He's not going to be working with a patchwork offensive line like he was in the spring game, and he's not going to have to run for his life for the most part this season. There may be games where Alabama's front or Ole Miss or LSU gives them fits, but I think for the most part, they're going to be able to hold their own and give Jackson Arnold just enough time to make plays down the field. And that doesn't even mention the running back group that I think is really, really good with Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes and Sam Franklin. This is a really, really good group. You bring in Xavier Robinson and Taylor Tatum. I think that's going to be a dynamic. Caleb Hicks is stepping into a significant role as a second-year player with the Sooners. It's going to be a dynamic group. And as we've talked about before on this show, because of the defense, because of the skill positions, because of what Oklahoma is able to do along the offensive line year in and year out, Jackson Arnold doesn't have to be a Heisman Trophy winner for Oklahoma to have success this year, because the team around him is going to be able to play more complementary football than they have in years past. And Brewster is a believer in what Jackson Arnold's going to do. He ranked number 2 among second-year quarterbacks coming into the season, behind just Nico Iamaleava of Tennessee. But, they believe he's going to take the leap. Of the 13 second-year quarterbacks, there were only one quarterback ahead of Jackson Arnold. The ones that came in behind him: Avery Johnson of Kansas State at number 3, Noah Fafita of Arizona at number 4. We're kind of in the how much better can he get camp. And then with Johnson, we are absolutely positive that they'll take the leap. Johnson, Arnold, and Iamaleava, those 3, they believe, will definitely take the leap. But he was ahead of Garrett Nussmeier, Josh Hoover at TCU, Malik Murphy now at Duke, Anthony Colandrea at Virginia, and Brennan Sorsby at Cincinnati, Drew Aller at Penn State. So there's a lot of really good quarterbacks, but I think Jackson Arnold has a chance to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country just this year. And I know you're going to say that's drinking the Crimson Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm an optimistic person, but I've seen enough out of him to see that the talent is there. Now it's just a matter of getting enough experience to not be shell-shocked by some of the environments that he's going to be facing this season, not be shell-shocked by the talent that he's going to face, that week 4 game against Tennessee. He's going to be facing some tough defenses this year, but he's got the talent, and he's got the talent around him and a defense on the other side of the ball that's going to be able to help keep games close where they're not having to score 40 every week to win. He's not going to have to pull a Jaden Daniels just to give Oklahoma a chance to win, or a Baker Mayfield, or a Kyler Murray. I was getting Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray all mixed up, and it came out Baker Murphy. But this is a quarterback that has all the tools, and I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do this season. And hey, I'm glad that some of the people out there are talking up Jackson Arnold, because I think everything else that people are focusing on with Oklahoma is like, hey, the offensive line's not there. You got a first-year starting quarterback. Well, dude, the first-year starting quarterback is really, really good. He's really good. And the offensive line that Oklahoma is going to be put out there is coached by the best offensive line coach in college football. So there's reasons to be optimistic with the Sooners heading into this year. One reason maybe not to be so optimistic about Oklahoma's 2025 recruiting class, and that's Jonah Williams in Texas A&M getting a little bit more serious out there. We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. The Oklahoma Sooners are kind of one of the undervalued, underrated teams in the nation when you're looking at the best odds to win the national title coming up in 2024. The Sooners still sitting at that 7.5 win total going into the season to make the college football playoff. The Sooners are only at a plus 500. That's pretty deep on the odds list We just talked about Jackson Arnold sitting at plus 2,500. And then to win the national title, the Sooners are right now at a whopping plus 7,000. But hey, you want to get in on that action? FanDuel is the place to go. Make every moment more with FanDuel right now. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park in Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And every recruiting segment here on the Locked On Podcast Network is brought to you by LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Got a bit of an update on the Jonah Williams situation with Texas A&M. The five-star safety out of South Texas went to Texas A&M in College Station, had his official visit. A couple Rivals recruiting analysts, Landon Rousseau and Marshall Levinson, did a fact or fiction over at Rivals. And they asked the question, they basically asked the question, fact or fiction, Jonah Williams will be the five-star prospect that commits to Texas A&M this recruiting cycle. So they're not necessarily saying he will definitely commit there, but of the five stars that Texas A&M is pursuing, they believe that Jonah Williams is the most likely to commit. Now, there's been a lot of buzz trending that direction. Steve Wiltfong, now of On3, put in a prediction favoring the Aggies for Jonah Williams. But this has been a recruiting battle that's kind of gone a lot of different directions. Ohio State's been in the mix, Texas, Oklahoma. Now it seems like it's the Aggies' turn to woo Jonah Williams or take the lead in the recruiting battle. But let's take a look at what these guys had to say. Landon Rousseau, an Aggies insider for Rivals, wrote, Williams has been linked to Texas A&M more than any other five-star, and Williams has continued to show Aggie faithful plenty of love. Williams also loves the baseball team in College Station and has a special bond with Mike Elko. Marshall Levinson went on to say, Williams is in College Station for the weekend for an official visit, and all signs are indicating a successful event, with Elko quickly establishing the culture and vibe of where the program will head. It is entirely possible Williams jumps on board sooner rather than later. Not super encouraging for Oklahoma faithful, but here's what is encouraging for Oklahoma faithful. Do not count Brent Venables and his staff out of any recruiting battle until a signature is on the dotted line. This one feels very much like the David Stone recruitment from last year. A prospect of high value, obviously a five-star kid with a lot of teams recruiting him, that the momentum, the buzz seems to shift on a pretty regular basis. There was a time, again, that Oklahoma looked like the significant leader. A lot of predictions were coming in favoring the Sooners. And then the tides kind of shifted to Texas A&M. Prior to Oklahoma, there was buzz about the Buckeyes. There was buzz about Texas. But again, the sands have shifted fairly regularly. I felt like we saw the same thing with David Stone, whether it was Michigan State or Oregon or Miami. There was this constant influx of recruiting insiders and buzz that were believing that the five-star defensive tackle was heading their direction and not Oklahoma's. Well, he ended up choosing Oklahoma. Jonah Williams has long been an Oklahoma fan. Whether that ends up being enough to move the needle, we'll see. We know that Brent Venables and his staff have made a strong impression at different times in his recruitment. The chances are is they'll have him back on campus for an official visit sometime this summer. And we've seen this coaching staff pull out late recruiting flips deep into the cycle. Now, Jonah Williams isn't committed anywhere, so who knows if he'll even quote unquote flip, but this just feels like a recruiting battle that's going to take us the distance, that we're going to get to the December early signing period and he will not made a decision yet. It just feels like this is a kid that's enjoying the process, that's enjoying looking out there and seeing what's available for a guy like him and what the opportunities are, how he's going to fit in a defense, how he's going to fit in a locker room. Well, do not count out Brent Venables. Don't count out Brandon Hall. They've done really, really great work on the recruiting trail at the safety position We've seen him pull off big-time recruiting wins with Peyton Bowen, Jaden Hardy, Michael Boganowski, Reggie Powers, Michael Patterson McDonald. I mean, a lot of they've moved the needle with safeties over the last few years, and I don't expect that to change with Jonah Williams. Now, there's a lot still to go on. They've still got to make a move and kind of win back some of that momentum from the Aggies, but I imagine that they will do that once they get him back on campus here in a few weeks, couple months, if they're able to get him back on campus at all. But I again, don't ever count out the Sooners until that signature is on the NLI. But for now, it looks like it's the Aggies for Jonah Williams. I mean, and this is one that Oklahoma will need to continue to pursue because he is that kind of a player on defense that can change your defense, that can add a big time playmaking element to your defense. Looks like maybe a perfect fit for Cheetah, has good length. He's a physical ball player. He's a ball hawk in the secondary, makes plays on the football with ease, and can take him the other way to the house. Looks like he could be a punt returner, kick returner as well if you wanted him to. Could probably start for 90% of FBS schools at wide receiver in addition to safety if he wanted to. He's just that good of a player, but he's going to make his money on the defensive side of the ball. And here's hoping that the Oklahoma Sooners, Brent Venables, Brandon Hall, Todd Bates, Zach Alley, Miguel Chavis are going to be able to move the needle back in their direction for Jonah Williams. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button and that like button to let you know when new episodes drop and to get it in your algorithm and the algorithm of your friends. Make sure your friends know about Locked On Sooners. We'll have coverage for you all week long and all summer long as we get ready for the 2024 college football season. You can go check my workout over at SoonersWire.com. Write about the Oklahoma Sooners on a regular basis over there, on a daily basis, really. But we'll be back for more here on Locked On Sooners. Again, it's your team every day. Thank you so much for being an everydayer with us. And follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, I'm John Williams, Boomer Sooner.